Hello. My name is Morgan Murphy, and I'm going to be discussing some topics of social psychology and where and how they appear in the Lego Movie, directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, and starring Chris Pratt, Elizabeth Banks, and Will Ferrell. Let's start with the social impact theory and how Bricksburg, the city Emmett lives in, plays a big role in how he tries to conform to his surroundings. The social impact theory states that there are 3 factors that determine the extent to which you're most likely to conform to a group. The first is the strength of the group and how important it is to you. When your attachment to the group is extremely strong because of your friendship with members, the amount of work and dedication you put into it, or the positive outcomes and effects it's had on you, you're more likely to conform with it. The second factor is the immediacy of the group and how close they are to you in space and time when you're being pressured to conform. If the group is removed from you, maybe you're alone while making a decision, or the group is spread out across the world only connected by the internet, you're less likely to conform to their norms. But if you live with your group or are in close contact with them on a daily basis, you're more likely to conform to their behaviors and attitudes. The third is the number of people in the group. While it only takes up to 3 or 4 people to establish a sense of conformity, if the number of people in the group grows, you're more likely to conform with them due to extreme social pressures. This topic is shown almost immediately in the film. Emmett wakes up with a smile on his face. He greets the day with a laugh and a good morning to most of the inanimate objects in his apartment. He immediately goes to his bookshelf and grabs a Lego brick that reads instructions to fit in, have friends, and always be happy. As the movie progresses, he continues to follow every instruction in the book step by step in order to fit in more naturally with his peers, including rules such as enjoy all popular music, use your turn signal, and don't forget to smile. This theory directly relates to Emmett because of the place he lives in. Emmett feels an extreme need to fit in with the people of his city. It's the first thing on his mind in the morning and the only thing he thinks about throughout the day. He believes the people around him are his friends, and they're very important to him. The community of Bricksburg is what seems to be a close-knit and friendly one. Emmett works very hard to be a part of the group in the beginning of this movie, so naturally the feelings he has for the group are stronger and greatly impact his decisions. In addition to this, there's the factor of the immediacy of the community. Not only are all the people of Bricksburg close in a friendly sense, they're also close in a physical sense. Everyone lives very close to each other, works close to each other, and even commutes close to each other. Instead of being removed from this group and having the chance to make choices that reflect his desires, as we can see later in the movie, Emmett makes his choices based on what the people closest to him are doing, which is something I'll continue talking about later. The last factor of group numbers is, in my opinion, the strongest factor that plays into Emmett's conformity in the Lego Movie. Bricksburg consists of a great deal of people. Emmett believes that all of these people are following president business and fitting in, so he tries his best to do so as well. While the conformity is already established in Bricksburg, Emmett still feels extreme societal pressure due to the sheer numbers of people who seem to fit in Bricksburg. He is also aware that doing anything other than fitting in might result in him being shunned and exiled, like what was done to the Master Builders. My conclusion with this theory is that because Emmett has been trying so hard to fit in with everyone in Bricksburg, and because of the immediacy and hugeness of the group, Emmett is extremely likely to conform to the community in Bricksburg, even if he doesn't think it's necessarily right. Next, I'd like to talk about informational social influence and how President Business's fascist regime enforces the ideas of conformity and fitting in. When in an unfamiliar situation, we look to others to define our actions and we gather information that tells us what to do. This is called informational social influence, when we treat the situation objectively and try to gather information that will guide us in how it's appropriate to act. When the situation is ambiguous or a crisis, or people with expertise are involved, our tendency to use informational social cues is heightened. After he touches the Craggle, Emmett is brought into interrogation by Bad Cop, who tells him about the prophecy that he must stop so President Business can use the Craggle to destroy the world. Emmett's response is, "Oh, but he's such a good guy, and Octan, they make good stuff," music, dairy products, coffee, TV shows, surveillance systems, all history books, voting machines. Wait a minute. In the past, Emmett saw people liking Octan and being comfortable with the things they were producing and endorsing. But on his own, when he has the chance to think for himself without interruption, he finds it very suspicious. President Business is the highest of all authority in Bricksburg and demands everybody love him and obey him. Because Emmett sees everyone else doing so, he follows. However, once there's no one to follow, he finds Business very suspicious. Emmett uses informational social influence when he resides in Bricksburg to determine that President Business is an awesome guy who has done no wrong because the people around him who tell him he should believe that. Now, Octan is where the scariest part of informational social influence comes into play. Business runs the city of Bricksburg, and along with it, a massive monopoly corporation called Octan that produces everything the city has to offer. No one in Bricksburg seems to be bothered by the fact that Business literally controls all business, and so he gathers that he shouldn't be bothered by it either. I think that it really shows how far social influence can take a society where no one communicates on a deep enough level to understand that something sinister is happening. Not to mention that Business wants to superglue everyone permanently and destroy the world as well, so there's that. My conclusion from this is that informational social influence had a profound effect on not only what the people of Bricksburg said and did and how Emmett was perceived by others, but also affected how Emmett viewed authority and what he and the rest of Bricksburg allowed Business to do. Lastly, I'd like to talk about illusory correlations and the prejudices that President Business holds against master builders. This may initially seem like a stretch, but stay with me as I explain it. Illusory correlation is when we see a connection or relationship between two things that really aren't connected in any way. For example, in our book, there was the example of a person not knowing many Muslims and since all they heard about was the violence that Muslim extremists practice, they assumed all Muslims are like that, and they were less likely to see the normal things that most all Muslims do, and less likely to see the violence that non-Muslims commit. While totally not as extreme as that example, the Lego Movie also exhibits the same kind of prejudice with Lord Business. Let me break it down for you. When Wildstyle is explaining the backstory of President Business to Emmett, she recalls how when the world was full of master builders, there were no walls or rules as to what you could build. But President Business was confused and blamed the master builders for what he thought was chaos, and hunted them down and chased them into hiding. Business concluded from his own experiences that all master builders were chaotic and never saw any of their creativity or whimsy due to his prejudice. President Business was overcome by prejudice. The master builders were members of a distinct and unique minority group. President Business assigned the chaos he felt they were creating to the fact that they were different and distinct, and then felt they should be eliminated. He then acted on that bias and actively discriminated against and persecuted the master builders to the point where he eliminated them in society and created what he thought was peace and order. The quote-unquote normal people of Bricksburg were then influenced to see the master builders as deviants and rebels of society, and the idea of them was treated with disgust. They were forced to hide and never return, and the world as they had known it was separated and divided so that no one could roam free. The conclusion for this is that President Business practiced illusory correlation by assigning the uniqueness of the world as a bad thing, and blaming the master builders for it, effectively discriminating against them. All in all, I believe that the Lego Movie was actually a really profound movie in terms of psychological concepts. I feel like there was a lot more I could have talked about, such as concepts of groupthink, group polarization, and aggression, and that while this is definitely a kids' movie, there are quite a few underlying themes that are meant for adults to recognize. Subjects such as fascism, religion, and family relationships are meant to make us think about our own lives and think about how we can live more freely and creatively. And I believe that this movie speaks very subtly but very clearly about these issues. I really did enjoy watching this movie. I thought it was hilarious in a really creative way, and I definitely recommend it. I also really enjoyed doing this project, and this has been a really awesome class. Thank you for a great semester, and thank you for listening.